Hello, hello, hi. Um, okay, so now why I know I've talked like a little bit about the Mica Miller case, and I think a little bit I spoke about it. I think I was in South Carolina at the time. Mica Miller allegedly took her own life on April 27th of 2024. Hi, Linda. April 27th of 2024, we had just arrived in South Carolina ourselves at Estill Island. And that's where we were for 2 weeks. And I virtually unplugged from literally everything. So, yeah. And then when I came back, we've been back 3 weeks as of Wednesday. And I am still not caught up on my day-to-day life that I need to be caught up on, but I'm really not caught up on cases that happened when I was away. But this Mica Miller one has been in my radar for this time period. And earlier today, I started to go down a rabbit hole with this. So I am going to try in this video to do what I think that I do best, is the deep dive, the research, just getting all the stuff together. You want to help, that's great. If you're following this case, you might be able to offer some more insight or tell us about things, but it's what I like to do, and I'm going to do it here live with you. So some things, okay. October 8th of 2023 is apparently when they filed for divorce, but it didn't end there. There was an involuntary hospitalization on actually February 8th of 2024. And then she was held for 48 hours. And on February 21st, she calls the police and says that while she was involuntarily hospitalized, that her husband stole her car. Because apparently when she was released from the hospital, which should be February 10th, she went back to a Walmart parking lot where her car was, and she said it wasn't there anymore. But it was the 21st when she reported that to the police. And she says at that time to the police that she has known her husband, this pastor. He's a pastor of a church in South Carolina, Myrtle Beach. And she says she's known him since he's 10 years old, and that he groomed her. And he, of course, says that she's highly episodic, so we're going to jump in from there. And unfortunately, we're going to listen to a 911 call that she places, allegedly saying that she's going to take her own life. But when you talk to and hear from family and friends, they say, no, there's something weird going on here. She wouldn't do this. More importantly, hi Nora, is that an ex-wife, okay, Alison Williams, who was active in the church as well, but at the time Mica was in the church, and they hired her as their babysitter nanny. Yeah, it's very involved. So if you've never followed this case, we're going to start laying down the timeline, and then listening to the 911 call, and then going through the newly filed affidavit from Alison Williams, the ex-wife. We're also going to look at stuff her family has said, stuff he said, his father, and all that stuff. Okay, so it's rabbit hole diving time, I guess. So let me get a image up here. And there is even a video of when her husband goes to his congregation and just announces that his wife took her own life. And boy, if you've seen that video. Okay, let me open this. Size this down a little bit. Okay. So. Okay. Let me go back. So I don't know if we should start at the end. On April 27th, okay? At 10:13 a.m., Mica Miller is seen on her Ring camera leaving her house, which was located on Margarita Drive in Myrtle Beach. And this is a picture of Mica on that Ring camera. Now at 11:38 a.m., she's seen again on a Ring camera leaving her residence again at 11:38. Okay, and this is the image from 11:38. And then at 12:12, Mica is seen on a store video surveillance. She was walking into Dick's Pawn Shop, also in Myrtle Beach. And that's at 12:12 p.m. And that is this that was captured right there. At 12:13, she's seen buying a weapon at this pawn shop. She seems to be smiling there. She also purchased ammunition. That was 12:34 p.m. At 1:06 p.m., her black Honda Accord is seen traveling on the Highway 501 near 4 Mile Road in Conway, South Carolina. Okay, let me... So her vehicle seen there. Doesn't look like anybody else is in the car with her. At 1:27 p.m., her Honda is seen pulling into 41 Grocery and Grill. That's located on Highway 41 in Mullins. right there. At 1:35 p.m., not even 10 minutes later, she's seen leaving that store. She bought a drink and she got some gas. Now, why she would worry about gas, getting gas in her car, unless she was literally on empty, if she had plans to do something to herself, a little suspect, but that was 1:35. At 2:54, a 911 call is made from an 843 area code number. And I'm going to play that call now. Again, this is at 2:54 p.m. on April 27th.
Robinson County 911, what's the address of your emergency?
Hi, are you able to trace the location of my phone?
Let me see. You don't know where you're at?
At National Park.
What's the phone number you're calling me from?
843-655-5242.
Where's the park located at?
In Bear Bluff.
Let's see.
I have my location on, I think, on my phone. Find my phone is on. I just did my show, my location.
Okay, I'm showing, hold on one second. I don't think you are in Robinson County. Yeah, the Lumber River State Park.
Yeah, that's where I am.
Okay. Tell me what's happening.
I'm about to kill myself, and I just want my family to know where to find me.
Okay, ma'am. Just listen to what I'm saying, okay? Let me make sure I got the exact location where you're at, okay? Just 1 minute.
ABC 15 News' salute to first responders
Hang on 1 second.
is sponsored by
Okay.
Easton.
Okay, so that is let me hold on.
Over to our website and look.
So I think that is at the end of that call because that's an ad that's coming up now. So let me see. That's like really a horrible phone call. I've not listened to that. So, let's see. Yeah, that looks like that's the end of that audio. So back to the timeline. So she makes that call at 2:54 p.m. And she again asked if her phone could be located. She said that she was going to take her own life. She wanted her family to be able to find her. She hung up the phone. Okay, that's what it is. She hung up the phone. And apparently the 911 operator tried to call her back multiple times, but was unable to make any contact with her. That call was posted on, I guess they're a local, I think it's their local news, ABC 15. And that looks like the end of the call there. Okay, so thank you. 3:03 p.m., Robeson County deputies were dispatched to Lumber River State Park, for a well-being check and to attempt to locate Mica. Now let me go to Lumber River State Park. Right here. Okay, this is there's a body of water, of course, the Lumber River. Okay, let's just put that, here to mark our timeline. Because this is where we are next. Okay, chalk banks, access area, Lumber River State Park. And so 3:03, Robeson County deputies dispatched to Lumber River State Park for that well-being check because she hung up that 911 call. Dispatcher could not reach her back. Contact is made with a superintendent at Lumber River State Park 2 minutes later at 3:05. Now at 3:20, deputies are requesting a phone ping, and the deputies arrive at 3:31 at Lumber River State Park, and they search the park with the state park rangers. At 3:33, Robeson County Sheriff's Office Aviation Division, Air 3, their drone was dispatched to the Lumber River State Park. At 3:42 p.m., a telecommunicator contacted Verizon to request an updated location ping. At 3:50 p.m., detectives with Air 3 arrived at the Lumber River State Park. And while conducting an aerial search, detectives were approached by a person who said he found a bag while fishing with Mica's ID inside. Detectives took that bag. Robeson County Sheriff's Office findings said the person heard crying and then a gunshot. The person stated he went further into the slough, I don't know, where he found the bag about 2 feet from the water's edge. And at 4:23 p.m., someone contacted Robeson County 911, said that he found a body in the water. The person that found a body in the water said he was fishing on a kayak when he found the body, and searching deputies searched the area for the investigation. So she makes the call at 2:54 p.m., and her body is found at 4:23 p.m. Shy of about a half an hour shy. 2 hours, like an hour and a half. An hour and a half later. Okay, and at 5:33, the chief of detectives from Robeson County Sheriff's Office arrives at the park location. 5:54, detectives and the Robeson County Sheriff's Office arrive at the incident location. Medical examiner was contacted and requested. There's CSI technician photographing the area, including the vehicle that belongs to Mica Miller. Items of evidence were collected from her vehicle. Investigators located a Sig Sauer gun case, and that was on the passenger seat of the vehicle. They found a box of ammunition that was in the center console. They found a receipt for the handgun from a pawn shop and a receipt from a convenience store. So all of that verifies the timeline, right? Both receipts were dated the same day, April 27th, 2024. The serial number on the weapon found in the water, the weapon was found in the water, matched the gun box that was found in her car. And that firearm was located later at 7-Eleven. 7-Eleven. It was located in the water. Okay, so we go back and we find out that when they start looking into this, who Mica Miller is, what's going on with her life, they find out that she's estranged from her husband. Her husband is John Paul Miller. Now, like I said, on October 8th of 2023 is when they filed for divorce. They were separated, but they were still in the legal system for this separation divorce, right? Deputies say information led them to confirm John Paul was with a woman who he was romantically involved with. Investigators confirmed both were not in North Carolina. Now, see, this is where I get very confused. We're in South Carolina, and I remember this very distinctly from covering this in the very beginning, how they went to North Carolina and said they were not in North Carolina, but she was in South Carolina. So why is North Carolina brought into that? Did they say they were in North Carolina? Is that what's going on and something's left out? Because I remember this same confusion. But anyway, investigators confirmed that they were not in North Carolina the night before or the day of Mica's death. Now, unless this Lumber River State Park, did she travel to North Carolina? Let me see where this Lumber River State Park is. See, this is why it's a deep dive. Because I'm learning stuff along with you, or maybe you know it all already. Either way, Lumber River State Park location. Okay, there it is. So this is in North Carolina. So she traveled. Okay, so this is at 2819 Princess Anne Road, Orem, North Carolina. It's a North Carolina State Park along Lumber River in Scotland. It says Robeson and Columbus counties. Covers 13,659 acres along a 115-mile stretch of the Lumber River. Lumber River State Park is located in North Carolina's coastal plain. Gotcha. So now that explains to me why she got the gas, because she was traveling to North Carolina from South Carolina, and now I am clear on why it's important that he and the romantic partner were not confirmed not to be in North Carolina the night before or the day of. Okay, that clears that up for me. Maybe for you too. Let me go back here. So, investigators found out that John Paul, her estranged husband, traveled to Charleston, South Carolina now, for a sporting event on April 26th. Now that's interesting because on April 26th, we had people in Charleston. They could have been boots on the ground, but no one knew of that, of course, because Mica didn't end her life until the 27th. But maybe they could have seen him. You never know. Can you imagine? This was proven through eyewitnesses and license plate readers. Detectives confirmed that he stayed overnight in the Charleston area. Can you imagine if he stayed in the same hotel that they stayed in? Our people? Okay. Now, John Paul's location, they show his truck on surveillance, and it was traveling from Charleston to Myrtle Beach on April 27th, and it was proven through license plate readers. Okay. So, we have that next. Okay, so John Paul Miller returned to Myrtle Beach on April 27th. And when he was traveling to and from Charleston, South Carolina, he was with other people. Mica's family met with the deputies to discuss the investigation findings. However, John Paul Miller asked the Robeson County Sheriff's Office to meet him in South Carolina. And the sheriff, Bernice Wilkins, said they did not plan to travel to South Carolina. Okay, and then a memorial service was held by her family on Sunday afternoon, and it was the same time a memorial service that was hosted by Pastor John Paul Miller was held at the Solid Rock Church. And that must be that I've seen footage of that, and it's just absolutely crazy. Then an announcement was made by the church the next day that said John Paul Miller was released from his ministry functions to give him a time for healing, counsel, and guidance pursuant to our governing instrument. And the church's website was also suspended over the weekend. That's where that has us still in that April. Now we have to move on from that because we want to go back further now and to see what was going on up to that point, right? Before we go even further after that point. Because October 8th, like I said, they filed for a separation, and I know that I have that timeline over here somewhere. Okay, here we go. So okay, let's go back again. October 8th, officially file for divorce. February 8th, she is involuntarily hospitalized for 48 hours, and that comes from a report from the Myrtle Beach Police Department. On February 10th, she gets discharged. The staff informs her that John Paul picked up her purse and car keys while she was hospitalized. A police report said that Mica went back to the Walmart neighborhood market parking lot where she left her car and it was gone. On February 21st, Mica reports to the police that she believes John Paul fraudulently initiated her involuntary hospitalization and then stole her car while she was getting treatment. Mica told the officer she has known her husband since she was 10 years old. She told them that he groomed her while she worked for him at Solid Rock Church until they got married in 2018. That's according to that police report. When the police officer reached out to speak to John Paul about this, he said she suffers from episodes on an annual basis around Christmas time. And he alleged that she spends large amounts of money when she stops taking her prescriptions. Since the car was considered marital property and the two were still legally married, no charges of theft were filed. On March 11th, Horry County Police Department reports that Mica called the police after finding her tire slashed with a piece of metal. Now, later on, it was said that that was a tire deflation device and it could be purchased online. She told the police of a potential suspect, but investigators said she had no evidence to prove that man was involved. The same day, Mica reports that the same suspect approached her at a gas station. She told him she did not want to speak with him. As she pulled out her phone to record, the suspect drove away. The man later showed up at an East Coast Honda dealership where she was getting her car fixed. Mechanics at the dealership told Mica that there was a tracking device that was found on her car. Okay, so that is like really crazy. So who is this potential suspect? It's not her husband. Who is this? Who put this tracking device? Is this someone hired by her husband? Who is this? Okay. So, the tracking device found, right? Mica reported that she was trying to get a restraining order because she was afraid for her life. And then an officer requested to meet her to get the GPS device, and she agreed to that. She was out front of a magistrate's office with an officer, and they saw a white Honda Accord slowly drive by, and Mica told the officer it was the suspect in her car driving by. So the suspect is a woman? Now I'm getting very confused. She had a black Honda, correct? I'm trying to look at this information here. It's because they said that she didn't have enough information about the tire, and they said, hold on a minute, let me see what they said. She named a potential suspect, but investigators said there wasn't enough information to prove the man was involved. The man later showed up at East Coast Honda dealership. Okay, then it says, while out front, in front of the magistrate's office, with an officer, she saw a white Honda Accord slowly drive by, and she said it was the suspect in her car driving by. We're going to have to research that one. The vehicle then sped up and drove away. A magistrate summons was issued for both Mica and John Paul Miller to appear for a bench trial on March 26, 2024, regarding a civil case. Mica Miller versus John Paul Miller, in which Mica was seeking a restraining order. On March 13th, someone at the Solid Rock Church, that's where he's a pastor, filed a police report alleging that an offender who the Myrtle Beach Police Department said was Mica transferred donation funds from the church's Zelle and Cash App accounts to her personal bank account. So there's a summons issued for Mica and her husband to show up at a March 26th bench trial. Mica Miller versus John Paul Miller. Mica seeking a restraining order. And then March 13th, someone at the church files a police report which alleges that Mica transferred donations from the church's Zelle and Cash App accounts to her personal bank account. The donations were meant for the church's 501c3 called Dare to Care mission. Its goal was to collect money for a mission in Kenya. Now, the person who filed the report said that there was $1,199 transferred to Mica's personal bank account. The report ends with an investigation will follow, but it's not clear if the investigation was complete. Police say there was insufficient evidence to pursue charges. Now, I do remember that as well, and I remember that there was a reason for that she was reimbursing herself, I believe, for money she put out. That's what I believe happened, or that there was a reason for that, but we'll look into that further. March 26th, the bench trial is held in that case of Mica Miller wanting that restraining order versus John Paul Miller. The outcome wasn't known at that time. Okay, now on April 26th, one day before Mica's death, deputies confirmed that John Paul and his alleged romantic partner were not in North Carolina. He went to Charleston for a sporting event and he stayed overnight. But why did he do that? Was he trying to create his alibi? I don't know. Robeson County Sheriff's Office say he drove back to Myrtle Beach the next day and he was with people as he traveled to and from the event. April 27th is the day of Mica's death. We went through that timeline. And let's see what we've got since then. On May 1st, leaders at Solid Rock Church filed a police report with concerns about an influx of harassing messages in the wake of Mica's death. On May 2nd, John Paul Miller sat down with WPDE for an interview. And I quote, he said, Mica was incredibly energetic. She was very creative. She created just about everything we have here at our church. Logos, designs, everything on the screen was all her. She was easily excited. The smallest thing would get her going and motivate her to do big things. During the interview, he mentioned some of the struggles he thought Mica had with mental health. And I quote him saying, so over the years since we've been married, some people struggle with high blood pressure. Some people struggle with diabetes or struggle with mental health. And whenever she stayed on her lithium, things were amazing. She'd come off sometimes and things would get a little unusual. Per her doctors, they even told her recently that she was homicidal or suicidal, and just as high as someone can go up, they can go just as low. And so the highs, you can see on film and all, but the lows were a lot of times behind closed doors. And she had struggled with taking her own life before, and each time we helped her through it and took her to the doctor, and we got her through it, and everything was fine. She even gave a few testimonies here at church. We have on video times where she had battled taking her own life. But God took care of her and got her through it. And so this past time, it's still a shock, an incredible shock. Although John Paul says Mica died by her own hand, taking her own life, the medical examiner at that time did not release her manner of death. On the same day, now Mica's sister, Sierra Francis, applied to be the special administrator of Mica's estate. That was less than a week after her death and 4 days before the Robeson County Medical Examiner announced her cause of death as suicide. Now, in that affidavit, Sierra claims Mica says she has experienced abuse and violence from her husband, John Paul. And on May 3rd, the probate court in Horry County named Mica's sister, Sierra Francis, special administrator of Mica's estate. On May 5th, friends and family rallied outside the Solid Rock Church. Some in Mica's family disputed the manner of death described by her estranged husband. John Paul Miller held a memorial service at Solid Rock Church, while at the same time her family hosted a separate celebration of life in North Myrtle Beach. And this is a photo from that. And scratch that rally, that wasn't that time. But this is trying to get this. Okay, so that was the memorial held in North Myrtle Beach on May 5th. On May 6th, the medical examiner releases Mica's cause of death, saying she died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Dr. Richard Johnson, Robeson County Medical Examiner, said it was not in the back of her head as it had been speculated. On May 7th, Mica Miller's family met with Robeson County deputies to discuss their investigative findings. Deputies extended an invitation to John Paul Miller. However, he asked them to meet him in South Carolina, and Sheriff Bernice Wilkins said they do not plan to travel to South Carolina. The 911 call, security footage, and timeline was released on May 7th from the Robeson County Sheriff's Office. So all of that stuff we showed you before was released by the Sheriff's Office on May 7th. And here's a picture of Mica's family outside of the Robeson County Sheriff's Office. On May 10th, John Paul Miller filed a petition in Horry County Probate Court for a formal appointment to be the fiduciary of the estate of Mica Miller. Fiduciary of the estate of Mica Miller. On May 13th, the Robeson County Sheriff's Office released a statement that they requested assistance from the United States Attorney's Office and the FBI in South Carolina in Mica Miller's investigation. Now, this statement, and I quote, says, the Robeson County Sheriff's Office has been in contact with the United States Attorney's Office and the FBI in South Carolina since the early stages of the Mica Miller investigation. Based on the information gathered during the investigation and jurisdiction reasons, the Sheriff's Office has requested the assistance of both agencies. No other information will be released at this time, and anyone with information pertaining to the Miller investigation in South Carolina is asked to contact the Columbia, South Carolina FBI office at 803-551-4200. The Horry County Probate Court, in a letter to John Paul's attorney, says it declined to act on the application for informal appointment filed in the case over Mica's estate. The letter continued addressing the formal petition for appointment, instructing the attorney to file a summons and petition on all respondents, and they would schedule a hearing. Those documents were filed by John Paul's attorney the same day. And at that time, the next court date was June 5th in family court related to Mica's motion for temporary relief in the divorce proceedings. But I don't know how that, I mean, she's not alive anymore, so. Okay, so let's see what else we have here. Now, so more information here is, let's see. Trying to see this John Paul, because then we're going to go on to the affidavit from the wife that was filed very recently, a few days ago. There's a lot of information in that. Okay, so let me go to that. Affidavit, but now my computer's being what? A little jerk. And close that. Let's see if that helps. That. Okay, so let me go back to this. Uh-oh. Hold on a minute. My Chrome here shut down, so I've got to reopen this. Hang on. Come on. Oh my goodness, let's go. Hang on with me for a minute. My computer's just being a little bit crazy. All right, I'm going to go back and make sure we're still online. Live. Okay, very good. And hi to everybody that's joined us. Lisa Hobbs, hi. Margot. Chris Ree, Paint It Black. Oh, I'm in top chat, that's not good. Go to live chat. And Kevin. Welcome, welcome. Is it true the husband was let go by the church? Well, they let him go, what I was saying, it said that they let him go for like the grieving process, but we're going to get into that now. Hang on. But I'm going to get that. Hold on. Okay. He was released from all of his ministry functions, and that was for a time of healing, counsel, and guidance. And then it said the website was suspended. On, let me see here, they have John Paul Miller's former associate said he's not the man I thought he was. It was a 68-year-old man who worshiped at the Solid Rock Church alongside Pastor John Paul Miller and his wife Mica. He earned a leadership post in October that gave him more access to the preacher, who was said to be very charismatic. And his name is Bernard Kennerson, and he gave an interview to News 13. And he said that he has since left the Solid Rock because he was troubled not only by Mica's April 27th death, but he was also troubled by John Paul's demeanor in the days that followed. He also wondered about Solid Rock Ministries' $5.59 million real estate portfolio and the inner workings of the church that, even as an elder, he said they were kept from him. Your only option if there was a problem, especially a problem with John Paul, the only option you had was to leave and leave quietly. He said this when he had an interview with News 13 anchor Edward Moody. And I quote, he said, no, that's not him. See, Mica's body. Kennerson resigned from Solid Rock on May 4th. He counts himself among those who think that Mica's taking her own life was not because of mental illness, as her estranged husband John Paul said in a sermon after her death. And I quote, he said, "This isn't some attack from the enemy, attack from Satan, attack from just some people that got mad and left the church. I'll just say it. I believe it's the judgment of God coming down." Kennerson said he got a phone call from John Paul's assistant at about 11:15 p.m. the night that Mica died. And I quote, he said, "She sounded sad, distraught, and told me that she was on the way to JP's house and that I had to get a message ready for Sunday morning. I remember one of the first things I said was, 'This is bad, this is really bad.' And then I just sat down to concentrate on a message. And less than 10 minutes later, he received a text saying that John Paul planned to take the pulpit on Sunday morning. I didn't think it was a good idea. I wasn't necessarily surprised." 3 days after that sermon, Kennerson was attending an elders meeting during which Solid Rock leaders were urged to stand by John Paul and weather the turmoil born out of Mica's death. Charles Randall, who was John Paul's spiritual advisor and overseer of the church, was a key figure in that meeting. Kennerson said, and I quote, he was like, "We'll get through this and we'll be stronger than we were." Now, as more reports of John Paul's abusive behavior began to come out in the media, Kennerson said he was appalled. And I quote, he said, "Just stuff that's come out that he's admitted to. I mean, for somebody that's not even a Christian, those things are appalling and shouldn't happen. And for somebody that's a Christian, even more so. And for someone who's a pastor, even more so. He wasn't the man I thought he was." Kennerson said John Paul kept a thick notebook that documented all of Mica's health issues, and he would page through it at times. Kennerson believed this was part of his manipulation in controlling the narrative around his wife. And I quote, he said, "The biggest hurt I experienced in Mica's death, whatever it turns out, I don't know, whatever happened with that. I'm looking forward to the full investigation and us getting the truth about that." And a month prior to this, Kennerson said Solid Rock's two services would draw nearly 700 people, and said that at that time it was less than 50 people. Kennerson said he wasn't surprised by the ministry's decision to close ranks, but doesn't think it will sustain it. It seems like them, but it's like wake up. He also offered details for the first time about Solid Rock's decision to buy a small airplane, saying those talks began months ago. Solid Rock Ministries registered its Cirrus SR-22 with the FAA on May 9th. The plane was going to serve the purpose of him going around and talking at different churches. Okay. All right, let's see what else we can find out. So I want to go to that affidavit from the ex-wife. I also want to tell you that an attorney for John Paul Miller denied claims made in a police report that John Paul Miller abused his late wife and groomed her from the age of 10. And I quote, saying, following the untimely death of Mica Miller, unfounded rumors and false accusations began circulating on social media and in various media outlets suggesting that Pastor Miller's involvement in her demise. This is from his attorney, Russell B. Long, in a news release. I'm going to go on with that. This created a buzz, causing local and national media outlets to be proliferating these falsehoods on a mammoth proportion. Our client refutes any report that suggests he ever abused his wife. Okay, and I'm going to go through this. Entire statement here because, again, it's a deep dive. So let me pull this over here. Russell B. Long for immediate release, May 9th. Clarification regarding the passing of Mica Miller. Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, law offices of Russell B. Long, on behalf of our client, Pastor John Paul Miller, issues this press release to clarify the circumstances surrounding the tragic passing of Mica Miller. Following the untimely death of Mica Miller, unfounded rumors and false accusations began circulating on social media and in various media outlets suggesting Pastor Miller's involvement in her demise. This created a buzz, causing local and national media outlets to begin proliferating these falsehoods on a mammoth proportion. Our client refutes any report that suggests he ever abused his wife. Recent reports claim that Pastor Miller groomed his wife from the age of 10 years old. Couldn't be farther from the truth. She moved to Myrtle Beach at the age of 15. She was married to another man at the age of 18 and divorced at the age of 21. It has come to light that Mica Miller struggled with mental illness, specifically bipolar disorder, which, when not properly managed, led to paranoid episodes and self-destructive behavior. Again, Mica suffered from mental illness, and some reports made by her in the recent past are nonsensical. The unfortunate reality underscores the importance of destigmatizing mental health issues and ensuring those affected receive appropriate support and treatment. We wish to emphasize that after a thorough investigation by the Robeson County, North Carolina Sheriff's Office, it has been conclusively determined that Ms. Miller's death was the result of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. This finding completely exonerates Pastor Miller of any wrongdoing. These baseless claims and false reporting have caused immense distress and harm to Pastor Miller and his family and needs to stop immediately. We hereby demand that all individuals and media outlets cease and desist from perpetuating these harmful falsehoods. Any further dissemination of defamatory and libelous statements will be met with legal action. A complete inventory of these defamatory and libelous statements have been conducted. Those that have to date violated Pastor Miller's right to live in peace and to mourn the passing of his wife respectfully will be held accountable. Those that chose to allow any previously posted or published false statements about Pastor Miller to remain in the public domain can expect to be served with civil litigation against them individually, and when appropriate, their media organizations and managerial supervisors can expect the same. We all have the right to free speech, but not that speech which is false and harmful to the subject of that speech. Many media outlets have reached out to Pastor Miller for comment, and we direct all future requests for comment be directed to Attorney Russell B. Long at his Myrtle Beach office. We appreciate your cooperation in respecting Pastor Miller's right to grieve and mourn his wife's passing without undue interference or slander. And that was from, sincerely, Russell B. Long, law offices of Russell B. Long. Next, this is when he broke down during speaking about Mica. Now, a church member said at around mid-May that I think it's pretty evenly split, that the church is. You could look around, this was on May 5th, I'm sorry, when he was talking about Mica's, oh, okay, hold on a minute. No, this was on May 5th. Apparently on May 5th, John Paul Miller gave a message in which he said he tried to raise Mica from the dead. And this church member said you could look around and some people were crying, but others had stone faces. And this person said, I'm not buying what he's selling. I just kept thinking, what a hypocrite. And I know 100% that I'm not alone. But another person disagreed and said the man just lost his wife. I know they had marital problems, but can you imagine how horrible he feels right now? I think a little compassion is needed. Now, Mica's family has been critical of John Paul. They accuse him of brainwashing her, and he strongly denies that claim. The pastor at this time said it was on paid administrative leave as he processes his wife's death. Leadership, website has been taken offline. Okay, so here's some things that have come out that are not that great. Not good at all. He allegedly emailed her and admitted that he posted a topless photo of her. And he told, no, I don't know if he told, it was evil. He wrote to her. He said, I'm sorry for putting a picture of you on the internet. It was for less than 1 hour and immediately taken down. So we're going to talk about next the documents that his ex-wife Alison Williams filed, because those paint a picture, and we're going to read those documents. So let me just get that. Okay. All right. So Alison Miller. This looks like May 28th on this one. The plaintiff, Alison Williams, formerly Miller, versus John Paul Miller. Plaintiff and defendant are citizens and residents of Horry County, South Carolina, and have been for 3 months prior to the filing of this action. The parties were previously married and were subsequently divorced on September 14th of 2015. Of their marriage, 4 children were born. 2 children who are now emancipated, and 2 minor children. Of the minor children, there's the initials AM, born in 2008, and SM, born in 2009, who are the subject matter of this litigation. The minor children have resided in South Carolina for more than 6 months prior to the filing. Okay. On October 30th, 2015, a final order approving the parties' amended final agreement for child custody, visitation, alimony, and equitable distribution was filed with the court. Therefore, the plaintiff asserts this court has jurisdiction over the subject matter, the parties captioned above, and the minor children. So it's a waiver of mediation clause. Plaintiff realleges the preceding paragraphs as if restated verbatim herein. Pursuant to the parties, the final order, October 30th, 2015. Okay, let's see. Plaintiff asserts that based upon circumstances that currently exist and the possible imminent danger and harm that could be caused to the minor children, it is not in their best interest to delay these matters from being addressed by the court on an expedited basis, and good cause exists for the court to waive this requirement. Therefore, based upon the totality of the facts and circumstances, the plaintiff alleges good cause exists for the court to issue an order waiving the pre-filing mediation clause in the parties' prior final order, and request the court issues such an order both pendent, light, and permanently. Okay, let's see. Plaintiff realleges the preceding paragraphs as if restated verbatim herein. Pursuant to the parties' final order, filed on October 30th, 2015, they currently share joint custody of the minor children, with the plaintiff being designated as the primary custodial parent, and the defendant being designated as the secondary custodial parent. Further, the minor children reside with the plaintiff, and the defendant has periods of periodic visitation with the minor children. As a result of the joint custodial designation, the parties have a duty to consult with each other with respect to major decisions concerning the minor children, and if they disagree, the plaintiff has final decision-making authority. Plaintiff alleges that since the entry of the parties' final order, filed again October 30th, 2015, there has been a material and substantial change in circumstance warranting modification of the parties' prior final order pertaining to custody and visitation. The plaintiff alleges that since the entry of the parties' final order, the defendant has exhibited increasingly unstable behaviors and failed to provide a safe and stable environment for the minor children. during his periods of visitation and has both exposed and involved the minor children in incidents of domestic dispute and discord, which have been traumatic to the minor children and not in their best interests. The plaintiff further alleges that since the entry of the parties' prior final order, it appears as though defendant's mental health has increasingly deteriorated and he has exhibited behavioral patterns that are erratic and irrational. At times, he has foregone his designated periods of visitation based upon his own assertions of not being mentally well enough for the children to be in his care. In addition to the foregoing, since the entry of the parties' prior final order, the defendant has used the joint custodial designation of the parties as a mechanism to harass, threaten, and control the plaintiff. As a result, the parties are not able to effectively communicate or co-parent in a manner necessary to share joint custody of the minor children. And plaintiff alleges it would be detrimental to the safety, welfare, and emotional health of both the plaintiff and the minor children to continue sharing joint custody. Therefore, the plaintiff is requesting the court issue an order granting plaintiff sole custody of the minor children. Plaintiff further alleges that based upon information and belief that since the entry of the parties' prior final order, despite the representations otherwise, the defendant has failed to seek treatment for his deviant sexual addictions and behaviors, which he admittedly confessed to both plaintiff and former elders of his church. And there's a former affidavit of the plaintiff that was filed that is referenced. Based upon information and belief, the defendant has continued to engage in deviant sexual behaviors and has exposed the parties' minor children to an immoral and unsafe environment. In addition to the foregoing, defendant has exposed the minor children to his adulterous misconduct with his paramour and repeatedly involved both the plaintiff and minor children in his marital difficulties. Plaintiff further contends that since the entry of the parties' prior final order, the current wife of the defendant, Mica Miller, was recently found deceased, the tragic facts and circumstances of which have become a major focus of social media, local and national news. Against the objections of the plaintiff, the defendant has discussed this matter with the children, and the plaintiff believes, given the totality of the circumstances, placing the children in the care of the defendant would place them in imminent danger and not be in their best interest. Plaintiff further alleges that prior to the death of Mica Miller, she confided in the plaintiff, sharing intimate details regarding the behaviors of the defendant and concerns regarding the safety of the minor children while in the care of the defendant. The plaintiff contends that until the time of Mica Miller's death, she provided a safety net for the children during their periods of visitation with the defendant, and based upon her recent tragic death, that is no longer possible. Based upon the foregoing, the plaintiff alleges that until such time as the defendant undergoes a full and complete psychological and parental fitness evaluation and follows all recommendations resulting therefrom, and a guardian ad litem can be appointed to investigate this matter and protect the best interest of the minor children, the defendant's periods of visitation and contact with the minor children should be suspended to protect the best interests of the minor children, and request the court issue an order granting this relief both now and permanently. Based upon the foregoing, plaintiff contends it would be in the best interest of the minor children to modify the custody and visitation provisions of the parties' prior final order by granting the plaintiff sole custody of the parties' minor children and suspending any further contact or visitation between the minor children and the defendant, pending the defendant undergoing a full and complete psychological and parental fitness evaluation and following all recommendations resulting therein. Okay, second cause of action. Plaintiff realleges the preceding paragraphs as if restated verbatim herein, and alleges in the event that the defendant contests custody, a guardian ad litem should be appointed to investigate this matter and protect the best interest of the minor children, with the defendant being solely responsible for the cost. For a third cause of action, modification of alimony and child support, plaintiff realleges the preceding paragraphs as if restated verbatim herein. Plaintiff alleges upon information and belief that since the entry of the parties' final order pertaining to alimony and child support, there has been a substantial change in circumstance warranting a modification. Based upon information and belief, the defendant has an income far greater than the amount he set forth in his sworn financial declaration filed with the court during the parties' prior proceedings, and that since the entry of the parties' prior final order pertaining to alimony and child support, the income of the defendant has substantially increased. Plaintiff requests an order from the court modifying the child support obligation of the defendant to reflect the current earnings of the parties and appropriate health care expenses for the minor children, pursuant to the South Carolina Child Support Guidelines, and that any such modification be retroactive to the filing of this action. Plaintiff further alleges that since the entry of the parties prior to the final order, in addition to defendant having a substantial increase in earnings, the monthly expenses of both the plaintiff and the minor children have increased, and based upon her financial need and the defendant's ability to pay, she is entitled to an increase in alimony and requests the court issue an order for the same. Fourth cause of action, restraining orders. Plaintiff realleges the preceding paragraphs as if restated verbatim herein. Plaintiff is seeking an order from the court prohibiting the defendant from degrading the plaintiff while in the presence of the minor children, or allowing any third party to do the same. Plaintiff is seeking an order from the court prohibiting the defendant from discussing this litigation or any other legal proceeding involving the defendant while in the presence of the minor children, or allowing any third party to do so. The plaintiff is seeking an order from the court restraining the defendant from exposing the minor children to dangerous, immoral, or unhealthy environments, the abuse of alcohol, illegal drugs, smoking, abuse of prescription medications. Plaintiff is seeking an order from the court restraining the defendant from exposing the children to their paternal grandfather, Wayne Miller, in any capacity. Plaintiff is seeking an order from the court preventing the defendant from coming about her residence, place of employment, or person, and from abusing, harming, harassing, communicating, threatening, or otherwise interfering with plaintiff or members of her family in any manner whatsoever, except in regards to the minor children, in the manner specifically requested herein, including in person, electronically, or through third parties. Plaintiff is further seeking an order from the court requiring any communication between the parties to be solely limited to issues concerning the minor children and only occur through the Our Family Wizard parenting application, further issuing an order strictly prohibiting any other form of contact, including but not limited to electronically, in person, or through third parties. For a third cause of action, attorney's fees and costs. Plaintiff realleges the preceding paragraphs as if restated. Plaintiff alleges that based upon the egregious misconduct of the defendant, that she has been forced to retain legal counsel and incur an exorbitant amount of legal fees and costs, resulting in a financial hardship to ensure the minor children are adequately protected. The plaintiff further alleges that based upon information and belief, the defendant is in a far superior financial position than the plaintiff, and that absent defendant being required to pay the legal fees and costs of the plaintiff, both current and future, she will be prejudiced and experience financial hardship. Further, defendant has the financial resources to pay both his fees and costs and those of the plaintiff. Therefore, plaintiff is seeking an order from the court requiring the defendant to pay her attorney fees and costs. Wherefore, plaintiff prays this honorable court addresses the matters alleged herein and issue an order granting the relief sought together with any such other and further relief for this further relief this court may deem just and proper. The plaintiff further requests that all other provisions set forth in the parties' prior final orders not otherwise requested to be modified herein remain in full force and effect. Okay, and that was dated on May 28th. And then there was a certification regarding the guardian ad litem. And let's see here. And then said here, personally appeared before me Alison Williams, who after being duly sworn said that she has read the foregoing verified complaint and that the allegations contained therein are true of her own knowledge, except as to those matters stated upon information and belief, and as to those she believes them to be true. Alison Williams, and her signature was notarized. Okay, next, to the defendant above named, John P. Miller, you are hereby summoned and required to answer the complaint in this action, a copy of which is herewith served upon you, and to serve a copy of your answer to the said complaint on the subscriber or subscribers at our office, and then gives the address. Okay. And then this matter is before the court. See, it says findings of fact. Plaintiff and defendant are citizens and residents of Horry County, South Carolina. There are 2 minor children. We've got all that based upon the verified motion of the plaintiff, affidavit, and attached exhibits. It appears the children may be placed in imminent risk and threat of harm if this order is not issued on an ex parte basis, and it would be in the best interest of the parties' minor children to grant plaintiff ex parte custody of the minor children and suspend any further periods of visitation between the minor children and the defendant until this matter can be heard by the court. The court further finds the present situation requires immediate attention of the court, and the 5-day notice required should be waived, and a temporary hearing should immediately be scheduled. The order shall remain in effect until further order of this court. Conclusions of law. Based upon the above stated facts, I make the following conclusions of law. The court has jurisdiction both over the parties and the subject matter of this action. 2. Plaintiff shall be granted ex parte custody of the minor children with any periods of visitation between the defendant and the minor children being suspended until further order of the court. It would be in the best interest of the minor children for this matter to be scheduled on an expedited basis, waiving the 5-day notice. This order shall remain in effect until further order of the court. Therefore, it is ordered plaintiff shall be granted ex parte custody of the parties' minor children with any periods of visitation between the defendant and the parties' minor children being suspended until further order of the court, and it is so ordered this 20th day of May. Okay, now there's more. So there's an affidavit of Alison Williams. And I know there's several outlets that have released these affidavits. I believe ABC 13, Fitz News, the WDPE it is. So you can find them all over. Let's see here. So this is dated, when is this? This is also May 28th. Alison Williams, formerly Miller, plaintiff versus John P. Miller. Personally appeared before me, Alison Williams, formerly Miller, who, first being duly sworn, deposes and states, "My name is Alison Williams. I am the plaintiff in this action. I was formerly married to the defendant, John Paul J.P. Miller, for approximately 16 years prior to our divorce in 2016. During our marriage, we had 4 children, 2 of whom are now emancipated. Our 2 minor children, AM, born in 2008, and SM, born in 2009, are the subject matter of this litigation. Since the filing of our final order ending action on October 30th, 2015, there has been a substantial change in circumstances that warrant modification of our prior final order as fully set forth in my verified complaint. Okay. I am providing this affidavit in support of my verified motion for an ex parte order and expedited temporary hearing. I have a voluminous amount of evidence to support the concerns and allegations contained in my verified complaint and motion. However, until such time as proper safety measures are in place, I am strictly limiting the amount of information shared in this affidavit and provided to the court. This affidavit should be read in conjunction with the affidavit previously filed with the court in 2015 to allow a full understanding of the facts and circumstances surrounding my marriage and subsequent divorce from the defendant. In 2015, JP was the pastor of Solid Rock Ministries, and I was served as his assistant to pastoral duties. We separated after I learned that JP was having an adulterous affair with our former nanny, Mica Miller, who joined our church at the age of 15. She was married to JP's best friend, who was also on our church staff and serving as our church worship leader at the time of their affair. JP told me that in addition to his affair with Mica, he had employed prostitutes and had been sexually inappropriate with several underage female members of our church. He blamed his immoral sexual behaviors on the sexual abuse he had experienced for years by his father, Wayne Miller. The church requested that JP enroll in an extensive sexual addiction program. However, despite him promising me that he would, to my knowledge, that never happened. The affair began between JP and Mica tore our personal and church family apart and caused an unimaginable amount of pain and discord in the lives of so many innocent people who truly trusted and believed in JP. At the time the church learned about JP's affair with Mica, the church was operating under the belief the old bylaws of our church had been amended, and that we were operating under new bylaws JP represented had been put into place that required the formation of a board of council members to approve any major decisions regarding the church, including financial expenditures. When the council voted to have JP temporarily step down from the head pastor position so he could seek treatment for his self-reported sexual addictions and focus on his restoration, instead of following the direction of our church leaders, JP held a meeting and informed the council the new bylaws were invalid and therefore pursuant to the old bylaws, and he had 100% decision-making authority. That was the first time members of our church had an opportunity to see JP for who he really was, and became gravely concerned about his integrity and the financial structure of the church. As a result, almost our entire congregation left the church, and JP began his quest to recruit new members and operate Solid Rock Ministries solely at his direction. After JP informed me that he had been inappropriate with minor female members of our church and disclosed to me the identity of these girls, I immediately contacted them to encourage them to come forward, although they each shared with me detailed accounts of what JP did to them. Let's see, they did not make a police report or testify in court. When I learned they were too fearful to report JP, I went to the police department for the purpose of making and requesting an investigation. However, I was in essence told by police officials that nobody would believe me because JP was a well-known pastor and we were in the middle of a divorce. Without the testimony of the victims, there was little else I could do to prove that JP had done and ensure he was held accountable. I began to realize the power JP seemed to have over leaders and officials in our communities, and based upon having limited proof, there was no way for me to ensure JP was held accountable and prevented from continuing to victimize innocent people. Given the circumstances, I decided the best way for me to protect our children was to reach an agreement with JP that contained terms I believed would ensure their safety and encourage him to seek treatment. To that end, JP had periodic periods of visitation with our children. However, we agreed JP's visitation with our daughter, who is subject to this action, would be restricted to solely daytime periods of visitation. Following my divorce from JP, he married his then paramour, Mica Miller. Prior to my knowledge of JP's sexual relationship with Mica during our marriage, both she and her husband at the time, Jeremy, became very close to our family. Mica did not have a close relationship with her mother, and to some degree I took her under my wing as an older daughter. I taught her to drive. I took her to get a driver's license. I allowed her to care for our children. I shared family mealtimes together in our home, and I provided her guidance and advice, and she began working in the church. Let me just make sure that I hear somebody texting me, so I just want to make sure that we are. Okay. Hi, Christine. Okay, shared family meal times together in her home, provided her guidance and advice, and she began working in the church. Despite the initial destruction caused by JP's infidelity, for several years there was part of me that was relieved to know Mica would be present in the home when JP had periods of visitation with our children, and I viewed her as a safety net for my children. Excuse me. Although our children continued to struggle with the anger and disappointment they felt towards their father, often refusing to share visitation periods with him, for a couple of years, things appeared to be not quite as tumultuous. In 2021 to 2022, things gradually began to change to the detriment of our children and have escalated to the severity of where things are today. JP and Mica began having severe marital difficulties, and our children were placed directly in the middle of this discord. JP would preach sermons on the Sundays our children were with him and present in the congregation, disparaging Mica and indicating that she had mental health issues and eventually putting her in a mental hospital. The children were subjected to JP calling Mica crazy one day, and then her being back in the home at the next visit, with their father assuring them she was fine. They never knew what to expect, and the intense unpredictability and marital discord between JP and Mica negatively impacted them all. On one occasion, while picking up our daughter, I observed holes in their walls, hinges off the doors, and pieces of paper taped to the wall with negative affirmations about Mica. JP told me and our children that Mica was delusional and speaking different languages and seeing things that were not there. JP agreed it was not safe for our children to be in his home, and for health struggles, the thought of JP having access to guns in the home terrified me for the safety of our children. It was about this time that JP began declining to pick up our children for visitation and informed me that his mental health was not well enough for him to share time with them. Of course, given the circumstances, I would have refused to let them go. However, having it be JP's idea made it far easier and safer and prevented the necessity of filing a legal action with the court. One evening, JP informed me that Mica had a breakdown and was on her way to my house and requested me to hold her when she arrived because he had the police coming. It was my understanding that Mica was trying to get away from JP because he was trying to have her committed again. Our children were at home and once again subjected to this severe discord. Mica began calling me for advice on how to free herself from JP and for guidance as to counselors and people to assist her. I prayed with Mica and did all I could to provide her with sound advice and guidance. Mica shared information with me about the things my children were exposed to while in the care of JP, and warned me that my children were in danger while in his care. I had several recordings and text messages that verify this information, and it causes me tremendous concern about the safety and welfare of our children while in the care of JP, especially now that Mica is no longer present. I was married to JP for 16 years. Although my story and what I lived through with JP is different, in some ways many of the details shared with me by Mica are so similar to my own experiences with JP that I know she was of the defendant and concerns regarding the safety of the minor children while in the care of the defendant. The plaintiff contends that until the time of Mica Miller's death, she provided a safety net for the children during their periods of visitation with the defendant, and based upon her recent tragic death, that's no longer possible. Hold on a minute. I think there's a page got in the wrong thing. I'm sorry. It skipped a page. I know she was being truthful. Based upon information and belief, JP's mental health and deviant sexual addictions have only worsened since the time we were married, and I do not believe our children are safe in his care. Since Mica's death, I have requested that JP not see our children. Initially, I was okay with phone calls and text messages. However, when recently texting with them, JP has inappropriately discussed the current state of events with them, sharing his plans of suing everyone and being a millionaire. Our children do not need to be subjected to any discussion about the current situation, as I am doing all I can to prevent them from being exposed to the massive social media and national coverage. For their privacy and protection, I have refrained from making any public statements or comments. Our children are highly upset and do not wish to have contact with their father, which at this time I strongly believe is in their best interest. My goal is not to keep our children from their father permanently, but until such time as he can undergo adequate psychological testing, following all recommendations to ensure his mental stability and assure contact with their father, it is in their best interests. Currently, JP is being threatened and followed on social media by people from around the world. Placing our children in that situation and subjecting them to social media coverage or involvement is simply not in their best interest. Okay, and then it says there's a flash drive attached showing the video of minor children fighting against visitation with the father. There's a video of the father, the defendant, admitting to suicidal ideations, the use of lithium, and mental health issues. There's a voicemail from Mica Miller to the plaintiff seeking guidance and evidencing severe emotional turmoil with the defendant. There's a social media post regarding admissions by the defendant evidencing mental health concerns and instability, and there's social media posts regarding affidavits issued by Mica Miller's family regarding mental health concerns and instability of the defendant. And there's printed exhibits, text messages from Mica Miller's mother to the plaintiff seeking help from the plaintiff. There's group text messages between the plaintiff, the defendant, and Mica Miller regarding their attempts to have plaintiff break the no overnight provision with daughter and confirming reason for restraint. There's multiple text messages from the defendant to the plaintiff informing her that wife Mica Miller was out of house and back in house, evidencing the constant instability for the children when with the defendant. There's text messages from the defendant to the plaintiff informing her he is not going to visit with the children, that there is too much strife in his home. There is text messages from the defendant to the plaintiff informing her that hole she saw in the door was done by Mica. There's a text message from the defendant to the plaintiff of his son's mugshot from his first relationship and evidencing children being exposed to more strife in life of the defendant. There's a text message from the defendant to the plaintiff of his son's mugshot from his first relationship. Oh, okay. And evidencing children being exposed to more strife in the life of the defendant. Okay. So he's got a son with another relationship prior to this, right? Okay. Text message from the defendant to the plaintiff about his sister who was living with him, indicating them being suicidal and upset when the children were present, evidencing further concerns about exposure of children to instability. And a text message from the cell phone of party's minor child to Mica Miller that was actually from the defendant, evidencing how the defendant put children in the middle of his marital affairs. Note, the minor children did not write these text messages. They were done by the defendant acting as though it was the minor child to attempt to persuade Mica to come home. Text message from Mica Miller to the plaintiff asking her to call her regarding the safety of the children. Based upon information and belief, JP is not emotionally stable enough to share periods of visitation with our children, and them being in his care would place them in imminent danger emotionally, psychologically, and physically. JP has readily confessed to having suicidal ideations and mental health issues, and that call his stability to care for our children directly into question. Based upon the foregoing, I'm requesting the court issue an ex parte and temporary order granting me sole custody of our children. I am further requesting this matter be scheduled to be heard on an expedited basis and that all contact between JP and our minor children be suspended pending JP undergoing a full psychological and parental fitness examination and following all recommendations resulting therefrom. I further request a guardian ad litem be appointed to conduct an expedited investigation as to the best interest of our children. I am further requesting the remaining relief and restraining orders set forth in my filed pleadings for an award of attorney fees and costs and for other relief the court may deem just and proper. I have attached a list of exhibits in support of my motion and request the court consider the same in consideration of the relief set forth in my pleadings. Okay, so then it shows some text messages that it says are from Mica Miller's mother to the plaintiff. And it says, Allie, I'm begging you, as one mother to another, please talk to me. I love you. I pray for you often. Please call me, please. I promise that no one will know we spoke. I'm concerned for the safety of my daughter. I'm asking, begging you not to let JP know I've reached out to you. He will just further isolate Mica from us, please. And then Exhibit 7, group text messages between the plaintiff, defendant, and Mica Miller regarding their attempts to have the plaintiff break the no overnight provision with the daughter and confirming the reason for restraint. So there's two people. It says here, did you tell redacted she can go on trips with you when she turns 13? And John Paul responds, what we hope for and what we pray for is that there will be a heart change, seeing as I have never nor will I ever hurt one of my kids or put them in any situation that would hurt them. You can continue to say no and you can continue to think the way you do, but we can continue to pray and hope. We didn't ask you, so there's no need to discuss it, but one day, if or when we do, we would love to discuss it. And then, hey, when you talk about it with redacted, it absolutely opens the discussion up for all of us. Redacted can't have normal privileges because you have committed terrible crimes of sexually aiming underage children. Praying for my heart to change is absolutely gaslighting. When you bring this topic up, or if you ask, I tell them the truth. I will not cover up and lie. I will continue to tell her the truth in an age-appropriate way. That's nothing a mother wants to discuss, but when asked to, the truth. Sadly, this is reality, and we face it and deal with it. If you don't want this discussed with redacted, then you shouldn't bring it up, or if she asks you and is sad, she misses out on vacations and such, maybe you should take ownership and responsibility for your actions, present or past, and own it. Say it's your fault and move forward. If you need or Mica want to discuss this more, let's sit down and talk about it. John Paul says this has nothing to do with my own child. The fact that redacted is with me all the time from morning until night. There's no difference between night to morning. She's with her dad. The time of day has no bearing. But you can do as you want. It is evil to remotely make a child think that their parent would ever in a million years hurt them. She says, I don't. I tell the truth while you legally have lost privileges. He says, the truth isn't that I lost the privilege because of legal mistakes. I don't have the privilege because I signed a paper that you had me sign. But you allowed redacted to stay the night for a while, and you can always allow it if you want to. because there's no difference in redacted with me in the day, afternoon, night, morning, etc. But again, it's your decision per legal papers. She says, we can sit down and discuss this more in person. I can show why legal papers were signed. It was to avoid presenting affidavits from the minors you essayed. Okay, thank you, he says. And then Mica says, put simply, redacted started choosing where he wanted to go at 13. So we assumed redacted would have that choice as well. Didn't think the gender was the issue, since we get Salai on a regular basis with no fear of anything happening to her. Didn't mean to make a big fuss and bring up 20-year-old issues. Okay. She says, Alison, who says there is no fear? This is not a 20-year-old issue. Do you think these victims of his would say it's 20-year-old issue? Also, JP still displays continued poor character and puts our children in harmful situations, paying redacted to take me to lunch, to ask me if he leaves you and the church, would I ever remarry him, and being unfaithful to you and putting my child up to be a middleman is a horrible situation to put my child in. Getting a job for and something at a location where their boss was one of his mistresses is a horrible situation to put my children in, especially since she had told a teenage coworker she slept with her pastor before her wedding, and those kids... Hold on. It is selfish and harmful and has no consideration how it could affect my children and all they have already been put through by him, and honestly you too. He has shown his interest and scheme at hand are most important by doing these things. The continued lack of character is harmful for all involved, and I will not hide it or pretend all is well when a finger gets pointed at as me, as though this is a possible misunderstanding or overreaction. I am peaceable, but will not tolerate any blame shifted and gaslighting, intentional or unintentional. John Paul says, okay, thanks. Mica says, no one is pointing the finger at you, saying John Paul's actions are your fault. However, what you heard about redacted is not true. I've done my due diligence. As far as redacted, I am aware of her transgressions, kiss, pictures, and John Paul's lack of guts to get rid of her sooner. I hope this won't affect your opinion of her children. Okay, and then Exhibit 8 are multiple text messages from the defendant to the plaintiff, informing her that wife Mica Miller was out of the house and back in the house, evidencing the constant instability for the children. Okay, so March 30th, 2023, John Paul texts Alison, Mica moved out so she can hang with her sisters, etc., etc., etc. We are legally separated, with an agreement very similar to the one you had drawn up for us, minus the kid stuff. Thanks. Peace. On March 30th, says, where is redacted? She had a middle school game or varsity. Then September 21st, Mica is officially gone from the house and Solid Rock forever, and divorce agreement is in effect. Please just keep this between us right now. It's very hard on me and I don't want added stress. I'm just telling you cause it's you. Then he texts, kids home, fed, and I got trash. Then on March 21st, 2023, he says, Mica's returning to MB. Not sure about the future, but for now I will be helping her to get healthy and independent. Tell me what I need to do for my kids today. I'm off and I have nothing to do, so let me know whatever is needed. Then he says, are Are the kids okay? She asked why. He said, you said we're going to talk to them. And I was wondering about Roblox. She said, talk to them. Yes, it's really sorry and sad, the situations you put our kids in. I hope you one day you'll choose better for their sakes, if not for yours. Exhibit 9 is a text message from the defendant to the plaintiff informing her he is not going to visit with the children because there's too much strife in his home. So December 1st, he says, honestly, you know, I would in a heartbeat. We are not in a good place, and this house is filled with strife. So sorry. She says, at your house, he's not answering me. School, he says. Exhibit 10. Text message from the defendant to the plaintiff informing her the hole she saw in the wall in the door was done by Mica. And he says on September 28th, by the way, the hole in the bedroom door was Mica, and I have a video of her doing it. So don't worry, I'm not an angry person. And he puts a smiley face. And she says about Redacted's birthday, he would rather see us at separate times for his birthday. That's fine, I'll stay here, he says. Exhibit 11 is a text message from the defendant to the plaintiff of his son's mugshot from his first relationship and evidencing children being exposed to more strife in life of the defendant. Look at this post on Facebook, he says. And it says, Conway man accused of hitting woman over the head with a glass bottle. I remember that. I think we covered that. What's that? I never even knew that was. I remember covering that. Text message for Exhibit 12 from the defendant to the plaintiff about his sister who was living with him, indicating them being suicidal and upset when the children present, evidencing further concerns about exposure of children to instability. Feel free to bring the kids home a little bit early tonight so we can get to bed early. Alison says, he says, Kay, they're both wanting to go to your house to eat. She says, okay, no dinner and dirty clothes, and puts a weird face like a, I'm sorry, I'm doing the best I can right now. Grace, please, she says. He says, John Paul says, and she says, you know what time to get. And he says, redacted crying in my living room, redacted crying in my bedroom. I'll call you in 2 minutes. And then there's a screenshot of something, I don't know. Can you pick up trifold poster board, she asks. He says, I doubt it. Redacted just walked in crying her eyes out with baby. Redacted, kids are eating dinner. I'll probably not be able to leave until 7:30. And then John Paul is saying, I'm worried if I get completely out of either of their cases that one of them will do something horrible, like take their own life or whatever. I'm worried Redacted could take their own life and Redacted would attack Redacted's uncle Redacted. And then there's a picture of someone. I have no. Text message from the cell phone of the party's minor child to Mica Miller that were actually from the defendant, evidencing how the defendant put children in the middle of his marital affairs. The minor child did not write these text messages. They were done by the defendant as though it was the minor child to attempt to persuade Mica to come home. And then so he texted, hey, it's Redacted. When are you coming home? Dad just cries and prays real loud. Dad says you can anytime. She said, I wish I could come home. He said, Dad said you can anytime. I told him, I'm asking you about lashes. She says, he says different things to me. I miss you guys very much. I cry too. And then he said, as the daughter or son, whoever would, he said he's sorry and it's your birthday. She says, yep, I'm 30. Just got my toes done at Daisy. Life is going to move on, but it will be really weird for a bit. Then he's texting again as the minor child. So you're not coming home ever? What can I tell Dad to do so you can come home? She says, thank you for your prayers. Inside, I know he knows what's right, but we have to make choices that line up with that. You're really smart and kind and pretty like your mom. I miss you. And then he says, like the child, Mom says boys are dumb, but I know Dad loves you a lot. I've never seen him cry so much. If he asks you, we talked about lashes. I have to delete this. She says, I understand. And then he says, as the child, I'm praying too, without Dad, that you will come home. He's crying so loud right now. Can you talk to him, please? I promise he loves you. He has your pictures all over the house. He won't do anything with us. He just keeps crying. She says, last time I tried to come home and be peaceful, he called the cops and said I was trying to break in after he was the one that asked me to come home. My hands are tied. He would not even let me in. Then he says, as the child, can I ask him? He has done dumb things, but all he does is ask God to bring you home. He doesn't even get out of bed. He just cries. I really liked you with my dad. She says, I know it's real hard, and I don't want to stay away, but he has already filed the paperwork. He didn't even file anything. He is leaving me and trying to make it seem like I left him. I don't think it's healthy for you to get involved because it's a lot for anyone to process. Keep praying, and if you have any questions, tell your mom, and I'll talk to her. And then he texts the child, I told him I'm asking you about lashes. Okay, that's a duplicate, sorry. Exhibit 14 is a text message from Mica Miller to the plaintiff asking her to call her regarding the safety of the children. Hey, Allie, it's Mica. I need to talk to you ASAP for the safety of your kids. Please call me. You almost free? Okay, and that's the end of that. So, hi, Astro from space. Welcome. JP would bring his girlfriends around the kids, and he was dating some of his kids' friends' moms. Allegedly, right? Okay. So, let me just see here now. Anything else here? All right. Okay, here's another photo of Mica. This is released by the Robeson County Sheriff's Office on May 7th. This is April 27th. Camera footage. It's from her going into that pawn shop. To buy that weapon and ammunition. Let's see something here. All right, so let's see what's going on here. On June 5th, Mica Miller's family won possession in the estate case. Mica Miller did not appear to leave a will. Mica Miller was found dead of a gunshot wound at Lumber River State Park in North Carolina on April 27th. On Wednesday afternoon, June 5th, a court proceeding was scheduled to be held in the family court, where a judge would review documents submitted by both parties. In the filing, the document names John Paul Miller and Solid Rock Church at Market Common as the defendants. An agreement was made between the attorneys of Mica Miller's sister and John Paul Miller, which led to a temporary consent order that was issued by the judge in the case. The order will allow Mica Miller's family to have possession of her property, in which the authorities had from the investigation of her death. Family members of Mica Miller appeared alongside local attorney Regina Ward at a press conference after the proceeding. Right now, we are very satisfied and happy that John Paul Miller has been advised by his attorney to allow us to get that property in our possession, said Regina Ward. The document states all possessions that were recovered by the Robeson County Sheriff's Office will be handed over to Regina Ward after the investigation concludes. The order also issues restraining orders which prohibit John Paul Miller and Sierra Francis from contacting one another other than through their attorneys, coming about each other's residences or places of employment, or threatening physical harm at each other. Francis applied to be the special administrator of Mica's estate on May 3rd and was appointed the role. Regina Ward urged lawmakers to revisit a bill called the Coercive Control Bill, and to rename the legislation Mica's Law, because Regina Ward said if it was enacted, it could have saved Mica Miller's life. In a letter Regina Ward plans to send to the South Carolina state legislature, she outlines alleged abuse that Mica Miller wrote about in journals and compared it to predictions that the Coercive Control Bill would have. If passed, the bill would charge those who exert coercive control over a victim with a felony. In the letters to legislators, Ward wrote Mica's list, which explained alleged abuses she wrote about in her diary that include stalking and tracking her whereabouts, isolating her from family and friends, and monitoring her communications and more. We do not know if Mica took her life simply because she was manic, or whether she possibly died as a way to escape the alleged abuse. What we do know is that coercive control is a real form of abuse that was recognized by Evans Stark and codified by other states, including Hawaii, California, and Connecticut. Let's see here. Tom Winslow, one of several attorneys representing John Paul Miller, said John Paul Miller filed to be the personal representative of the state because it's his duty as a spouse, and it's procedure in South Carolina when there's no will. To date, no note left by Mica Miller prior to her death has been found, the absence of which is another reason. The attorney Regina Ward and the Francis family are skeptical about the sheriff's office ruling Mica's death a suicide. The other thing is, it is not credible to me that a woman who wrote so many journals and so many things so often would not take the time to write her family a note to explain, if she had done this, why she had done this. Why would she not leave a note? Winslow points to the 911 call Mica made, saying that many people don't leave suicide notes. What I would do or someone else would do is not for me to judge. I'm not in that situation, Winslow said. Winslow said Mica Miller suffered from mental health issues for years. He also said he doesn't think the absence of a will is surprising due to her young age. And Winslow goes on to say, and I quote, "The situation you have here, unfortunately, is a young lady who has been undergoing years of mental illness, numerous hospitalizations. What we're trying to do is apply logical reasoning to mental illness, which is an illogical process. I can't judge what she would or would not do because I'm not her. And then her attorney, Regina Ward, argues she saw no evidence of Mica Miller suffering from mental health issues. Some people would say, oh, well, you know, she had that mental health problem. Please, no. The woman was as rational as you could be. In my opinion, my dealings with her and my staff's dealings with her, never any indication of that. There was no autopsy performed. And Mica Miller's body was cremated. The family signed off on a cremation. They wanted a cremation. Ward, however, described John Paul Miller using cremation as a bargaining tool with Mica's family. Ward said John Paul Miller originally told her he would not let the Francis family see Mica's body unless they took down all the bad things they posted about him. Ward said that after she spoke with him, he decided to let the family see the body, but with a different condition instead. What I was told later, of course, was that he still put a requirement of, oh yeah, you can see the body, but not unless the parents sign for the cremation certificate. When the family saw Mica's body, Ward said there were signs that led to more questions regarding the cause of death, not closure. Another question mark surrounding her death is why no autopsy was performed. Winslow, attorney for John Paul, said there was no autopsy because the family signed off on the cremation, saying, and I quote, "Look, I wasn't there. Anything I say would be hearsay, but that sounds like a story you heard, not any kinds of facts or evidence that you could show me. Sounds like the family is putting out their narrative on what they think to be maybe true or indicative of their position throughout this entire matter, one side of the story." Okay. What we do in the court in law is we don't react emotionally. We don't respond to allegations. We don't respond to texts. Winslow said we prepare our case with evidence. And so when the time comes, evidence will be presented. Texts will not be presented. Stories will not be told because that's based on emotion. And everyone is entitled to emotion. With a tragic event like the loss of a 30-year-old, and Mica's a sweet girl, beautiful singing voice, tragic loss, but once again, in the court system, it is not our job to put out stories to rile up emotion. It's our job to present facts that are legally admissible. Now, Regina Ward said the family of Mica is considering civil suits against John Paul Miller and possibly Solid Rock. Asked if John Paul Miller is considering bringing civil suits, the attorney Winslow said everything is on the table. When anyone has been slandered, defamed, libeled, done wrong, they've lost a spouse wrongfully, you have to leave those doors open, that's what Winslow said. All right, and I am, with that, I think we covered a lot. I'm going to let you go. Thanks for coming and watching, and it's 12:22 now, and I've got to get myself going on some shipping and invoicing. So I will see you guys later. We did start watching that Dancing for the Devil. I watched the first episode. I really didn't understand all the hype that's around that. It really wasn't captivating for me. I'll have to get others' opinions on that. I didn't find it interesting, sorry to say. So I don't even know that I'm going to finish it. But Thanks, everybody, and thank you for watching. I'll see you guys later. God bless, prayers, and happy again birthday to Marianne. Yesterday we said that 85th birthday for Marianne. So if you're listening again, happy birthday. All right, see you guys in a little bit.